Hi, buddy. Welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and today we have a special analysis video, and I'm going to be talking about Doublelift's video that he published that's called The Downsides of a Constantly Evolving Game. I've been asked about this several times on stream, and a lot of other content creators have also created videos about this. So Skara just published up a video today where he was adding his thoughts about it. So I figure I'll go ahead and add my thoughts about it because it is a very well thought out video. It makes lots of claims that seem very interesting and can hype people up, but we're going to dig into that and how much of that is actually possible, how much of that is actually a good thing, and what is the current state of League in a sense, and are there problems, and what could be the fixes to these problems. So I mentioned stuff like this in my other content as well. Whenever I do tier lists, I talk about the current state of the meta. Whenever I do patch notes, I talk about the current state of the meta. But I figure I will tune this one to specifically address Doublelift. So if you want to find timestamps and jump around your favorite parts, I'll have those in the description for you. You can also find access to this Google Doc in the description, and I will link Doublelift's video here. I'm not going to go through the whole thing because this video is probably already going to be long enough, and it's like a 6-minute video, and I don't want to get a copyright violation for it. So go watch it, give him a view if you want to see it. It is very interesting. It is only about 6 minutes long, but just go give him the view is, one of the major reasons as well. Because he did a good job. His editor did a good job of editing it, and then, of course, his ideas are pretty strong as well. Okay, so let's talk about this. So League has been having some problems, over this year specifically, but then also over the last couple of patches. It's undeniable that, numbers have dropped off a little bit. I know on my channel specifically, numbers have dropped quite a bit in terms of viewers and subs. And I mean, part of that is, there's a lot of stuff that goes into that, right? Like maybe I'm just not doing the kind of content that people want to see as much, or maybe, whatever, this reason or that reason. But I think that there's definitely an inexplicable link between, like, the last couple of patches and people's overall dissatisfaction with League and viewership dropping, not just on my channel, but on lots of other streams as well. So let's talk about kind of why that is, what's going on, what's the potential fix that. So first off, before we go directly into Doublelift stuff, and I broke down like his 9 major claims that he makes in this video, and I'll talk about sort of what that means. But first, I think it's important to think about how League is structured in terms of people who interact with the game. So you've got your casual players, you have your committed players, you have your pro players, content creators, and Riot. So I think these are 5 different groups with 5 different goals out of what they want from League. So I'm just going to talk about those really quickly, and you'll notice that some of them conflict with each other. And that's why it's very difficult to create a game that's ever going to be perfectly balanced or perfectly accepted by everyone in the community. There are just so many different types of people that are involved, and it's such a huge game. And there's even more contingencies in this. You've got like North America specifically versus international audiences, because League in China specifically has been blowing up. It's massive. It's wildly increasing in popularity. And then it's always been really popular in Korea and continues to grow over there. And in a lot of other regions as well, some of these burgeoning regions, like I think it's still becoming a lot more popular in South America and Oceania, all these places. I think in EU it's still pretty popular as well. But I think most of the critique about League has come from NA players specifically, and to a lesser extent EU. I don't follow the EU scene as much, but I think that this is primarily like North America is much more upset about these changes than a lot of other regions. Okay. So first off, let's talk about these different types of players. So a casual player, this is most people who play League of Legends, and it's very important to understand that these people do not go on the message boards. They do not watch analytical stuff. They're probably not watching this video right now, right? There are some casual people that watch my channel, but most people that I'm calling casual are people who just pick up the game, maybe play a couple of games a day. They don't really read patch notes. They don't watch a lot of pro games. They just kind of play it, for fun with their friends, or they just want to sit down and just play a game or two of League of Legends before they do their homework or before they go to dinner or whatever, just for some fun, right? So that is kind of the casual type of player, right? So they play relatively few games. They play other games on the side, right? So they might play a game or two of League. They might go play World of Warcraft. They might, want to go play some Fortnite and then play some League. And then maybe, later on with their friends, they're going to play some, PUBG, or maybe they're going to play Overwatch for a couple of games. They just jump around. Every day they might be playing a different game. So they play other stuff with League. All right, so they don't really... That's going to come into play when we talk about Doublelift's thing, like specialization and mastery and how the game should be played. These people aren't going to be doing that. They're not going to be playing for mastery. They're not going to be playing, 1,000 games as Yasuo, probably, right? because they don't play enough games to get that level of mastery, and they're not interested in League enough to get that level of mastery. They just want to, queue in, play something that's fun, play Darius top lane, play Lux middle or whatever, try to get some kills, have some fun with it, and that's it, and just go about their day. Right? Now, these are kind of the for fun players, all right? This is sort of a meme that's going on, but they do play just for fun. They just want to have a game every now and then. They like a little challenge. They like winning, but, they're just going to grab their stuff, their builds off of Mobifire or whatever. They're going to see some champion that they want to play, and they're just going to go for it, okay? So they have a very low commitment, oftentimes, to very specific champions and strats. What they want more than anything is novelty and newness. Because novelty and newness does not require mastery. What I mean to say. So, if you really want to get good with Yasuo, like, you need to play a lot of games, probably hundreds of games with Yasuo, right? Now, they might still play Yasuo every now and then, but they're much more interested in watch the channels that get the most views, too. This will tell you a lot about it. If you look at channels, and I'm not going to call out anyone specifically, but I'll just list a whole group of them that do this type of content over time, right? If you look at things like Philol, Nightblue, Solo Renekton Only, just a lot of these other League channels that do all caps videos. What are they talking about? Are they talking about champion mastery? They're giving you in-depth content to help you become a better player, to help you understand the meta and how to micro better and macro better and all that stuff. No, they're giving you all caps videos about novelty picks, right? You're going to see, oh my god, it's full AP Quinn top lane, or oh my god, it's AP Tryndamere top lane, or oh my god, it's, whatever, Janna AD mid lane, right? And they create these videos. Oftentimes they'll go on Smurfs, remove the nameplates, and just play and get these novelty videos out there. Those are the kinds of videos that get the most views, right? A lot of times, those are a lot of the channels that get the most views. Heavy analytical channels, like my channel, or even a bigger name like Last Shadow, LS, who has been a very popular League commentator, probably one of the, most popular as far as like analytical goes, or like Freak. If you look at how many views like their channels get, it's nowhere near the same as these novelty picks. So this is what people want, obviously, by the viewership, is novelty picks. They want to see things that are new and interesting, and they just want to get in there and play them in the couple of games they can play before dinner, right, or before their homework. They're like, oh man, I saw this Janna full AD mid lane. Let's go do that. Or I saw this LeBlanc jungle. That sounds cool. Let's go do that. And they'll just click on, they'll watch that video, and then they'll just go do it. Because that's what a lot of people think is fun, is trying out new stuff. Because, if it doesn't work, you can say, well, I just tried it once. I'm not very good at it. You don't have to have any sort of responsibility. You don't have to feel bad about it hardly. It's like, I tried something new, whatever. Versus if you lose and you're like that 1,000-game Yasuo player, you're committed, right? And you have to reflect, man, maybe I'm not really that good or whatever. Whereas the casual players can say, well, I could be really good. Of course I could go pro. It's easy, right? I could be challenger, no problem. But because I play these fun picks, I play these off-meta picks, and I don't really play the game that much, whatever. So it gives them this kind of self-defense mechanism when they're playing. I don't want to go too far into psychology. I have plenty of videos on that on the channel. But anyways, my point is that the vast majority of players are casual players, and they want novelty and new things. At least as evidenced by what you see in a lot of these all-caps videos. And anecdotally, what I see in some of my solo queue games as well, right? Okay, then there's another class of players called committed players that I'm calling them. These are people, they aren't pro players, but they play a lot of games, they watch pro games, they watch analytical stuff, they follow patch notes, they look at pro guides, they watch channels like mine or LS or Freak or, some of these other people. And a lot of times these people do specialize. So they have a very heavy commitment to certain champs or strats, right? So they are a top lane player. They really are heavily invested. If top lane gets nerfed, they're going to be pissed, right? A lot of times they have a very specific champion, so they will play only like Riven and Yasuo, or they'll play, only like Talon and LeBlanc middle, or they'll be bot lane and they'll play only Vayne or only, Draven or something like that. So a lot of times these will be one-trick players. If they're not one-trick, they're usually committed to like one specific role, and they care a lot about League because they play League quite a lot. Right, so they might play other games, but they're going to play mostly League of Legends, and they're going to try to play to get to a higher rank. Right, so it's a very, very heavy commitment to specific champs and strats, and they are going to be heavily biased towards things that are favoring those strats, and they're going to be mad if those strats don't work. Now, this is the majority of voice for League of Legends, and it's important to remember that. Casual people don't go on Reddit forums and comment. Casual people don't comment on YouTube videos. It's the committed players. It's the people that have these biases. That's what you see. So whenever you read a Reddit post, whenever you read YouTube comments, just anything that shows up, most people who are like content creators fall into this camp of committed players. They have very specific biases most of the time. And, there's always going to be a large contingency of them that are mad because not everything is going to be equal all the time. We'll talk about that here in just a second. But that's important to realize that committed players are a much smaller portion of league than casual players. Now, you can be a committed player and still be in like bronze and silver for sure, but a lot of these players are going to be, like gold, platinum, stuff like that, and, definitely diamond and above. I would argue you can't really get to diamond and be a casual player unless at one point you were super committed, like you were a pro player and just every now and then you play some games. You could probably still get to diamond, but mostly, those higher ranks are going to be committed players. All right. So they want stability around their meta. So they don't want novelty. They don't want to see those weird picks in their lanes. They don't want to see crazy jungle stuff going on. They want commitment. They want to be able to log in and play that same kind of Riven game that they've been playing for 3 to 4 years. Same item build, same matchups they already know, and they just want to express their skill and outplay the opponent in lane and try to rank up. Right? So a lot of these players have been playing for quite a while, usually several years, and they have very specific champions and strategies they like. And if those champions are out of the meta, or if those strategies are out of the meta, they're not happy about it. Okay, they do not like novelty, they like stability. All right, pro players, it depends a lot of time. Okay, so veterans are going to want stability around their favorite meta, right? Because that's your job security. Now more than ever, teams are benching or trading or whatever, players if they aren't effective. And this has been around for a long time, guys. People act like, oh, all of a sudden, Sneaky got benched because AD Carry is, people think that AD Carry's dead or something, and so they, bench Sneaky and all this stuff. This has been going on for years. I mean, you think about some people that were good in certain metas, like Dyrus, for example, top lane, tank meta, where, you just never had a carry top laner. Eventually, he retired because they started, it needed to become important that you had a player who could play carry top lanes, who is a bit more versatile. Or you see this all the time with junglers too. Some junglers are very good at kind of the tanky utility junglers, and some junglers are much better with the upbeat, assassin type of junglers, right? Like Bengi, for example, was a very good, who played for SKT. He was a very good supportive jungler for a long time. He didn't play a lot of the assassin stuff, but he was pretty good on the tanks. And so that happens, like you lose your job, if you're a really good tank jungler, but you're terrible on like carry jungles and the meta shifts around to where you need to be a carry jungler. This has been happening for years. You'll get benched or you'll lose your job. And that's part of why like Koreans are really the ones who started the multiple roster thing where they would switch in and out. Someone like SKT would switch in and out, usually a jungler, because they would want to do a certain type of strategy. And so that's just been the nature of the game for a long time, as it evolves over time, and some players end up with the short end of the stick. This happens in all kinds of careers and other sports and things like that too. If certain strategies lose their dominance, like I had some students last semester talk about hockey, for example, and the evolving nature of hockey and fighting. And now apparently enforcers, teams just don't use enforcers anymore, who are the people that would go up and like start fights and try to protect star players and stuff like that. That was a staple of hockey for a very long time, supposedly. I don't follow hockey, but this was what was in their research paper and their presentation. But the game evolved. It's become a lot more eloquent, a lot more skill based, as they said in their research. So you didn't have to do that kind of fighting anymore. So if you were an enforcer, you probably lost your job, or you can't get hired to begin with. Pro teams, whenever they made that transition, they wouldn't want to pick you up because they'd want more skill on their team. So this happens all the time, and everyone just feels like, all of a sudden this is the first time this has ever happened where, a player has not fit into a meta, and so they've had problems. But anyways, so veterans want that stability. They want that job security. I would argue that a lot of rookies, though, like change. They would like for there to be a shakeup because that creates spots for them to come up, right? So if you think of like Cloud9, the headline was well, Sneaky got benched, and everyone else over there, Jensen, all these people. But what about the new people that got to come up? These kids that have been trying probably for years to get their shot at the LCS, and now they finally have their shot. They get to play a few games, and get out there. Like, that's a very positive, good story for them. It's bringing in new blood. It's giving people new opportunities. I know everybody loves Sneaky. I love Sneaky too. But, to be fair, you got to look at both sides of the coin. Like, when there's a lot of change and instability, that creates opportunities for new players to show off these new strats, to put the time in, get good, and, progress forward. And so I think that there are definitely some pro players that like this kind of change, that are very good with this versatility. I mean, Hooney's someone, for example, that would probably really thrive in this environment because he is very versatile. And that's a skill in and of itself as a pro player, is having that versatility, having that depth, right? It's not solo queue. It's not all one tricks, right? So that is part of being a pro player, is you have to be adaptable. You have to be willing to change. And that's what separates a lot of the best pro players from pro players that are just basically one tricks, where if the meta shifts out and they can't do anything else about it, well, they're just not as efficient as other people, right? So I do understand Doublelift's point, which we'll make about here in a second, about like skill and commitment and stuff like that, and like the Zed outplay video and stuff like that. But being able to adapt and change is also a skill in and of itself, especially at the pro level scene. And it keeps the game fresh too for viewers. Okay, content creators. This is another group. So far we have the casual players who want novelty. We have the committed players who want stability around their favorite meta. We have pro players that are probably kind of split, right? It's, stability is good for some of them, but novelty and new stuff is good for other people, especially up-and-coming rookies, people in the challenger circuit and stuff like that. Content creators, they want the game to be popular more than anything. So they want whatever they think is going to be good for the game and for viewership, but they also want to create all caps videos because that's what gets the views. And so they like kind of this doom and gloom, every patch, it's all over with. This pro player said this pro player said that. There's this crazy new strategy going on. So part of it is like, it's good, it helps them because now they can talk about, crazy Heimerdinger bot strategies, or crazy, this funnel comp or that funnel comp or this, because these are like legit strategies that are actually working. So now instead of telling people to go AD middle Janna, they can actually say, hey, why don't you go, smite middle Aatrox? And it's actually viable. People can actually win with it, right? So I think that overall that's good. It gives them a lot more fuel, so they don't have to stretch so far to create their all caps videos every day. But then they also get to critique and make fun of the stuff and talk about how it's bad for the game, even though it's good for their wallets. So it's kind of this like, backhanded sort of relationship that a lot of these content creators have. So that's interesting. I mean, it does give me a lot of new content to analyze too, because there's new stuff going on all the time, which is cool. I try to be honest with you. I don't do the all caps videos, but I just think it is kind of amusing. And I'm a little more measured about it. I think there's some good things and some bad things about these changes, but anyways, a lot of content creators, if they're streamers though, if they're not just someone who just puts out all caps videos and doesn't really like play the game much anymore, like there are a few of those out there, then they want stability around their favorite meta, because your rank matters when you're a content creator. So if you fall from like challenger to diamond, like that's bad for your viewership. I mean, some people can deal with that. Like I'm a CutiePie has such a huge following that he can handle that, but there are other content creators where if you're not like at the top of the top, and you fall down, some ranks, that can be really bad because some people may not give you a shot. So, if you're, I don't know specific people, but if you're like, I've heard that like Solar Renekton's only platinum now or something, for example. Then that could be bad, right? If you're not diamond and you fall down to lower ranks. I know that like, what's his name? I'm trying to remember the other, support guy. I think Low Pally's not challenger anymore. I think that damn it, I can't remember his name. Nasty or whatever is not challenger anymore. He dropped down to Diamond 5 at one point earlier in this season. So that hurts, and it hurt. I mean, I have fallen down, some ranking. I was as high as Platinum 1 earlier this season, and then I, fell down to Platinum 5, and I've been, trying to work my way back up. I don't think it's because of this meta, though. I'm not making excuses about this meta. I just think that there's a lot of stuff I'm working on, such as like just focusing up and just, paying more attention to the mini-map and trying to interact less, like saving the chat interaction for between games instead of during the game as much and stuff like. Anyways, whatever. Content creators want to be a high rank, though, if they stream, if they create content like that. And so they want their favorite meta to be strong. Okay? And then finally you have Riot here. So Riot wants to satisfy impossible desires by players. They want to try to make everybody as happy as possible. But if you start looking at... I don't know if y'all can hear that. Let me just... Give me 1 second. My clock radio, I forgot to reset it. Let me just turn it off the other room. It's like 10 seconds. Sorry, I wasn't sure how loud that was going to be for you. But yeah, I mean, here's just a brief history of people in the last 2 seasons, what they complained about. AD carry, first of all, I didn't even put this on the timeline, but you had the ADC, 2K17 lull, where everyone was saying AD carry's dead, AD carry's terrible, back in like the winter of 2017, December 2016, where it was like an assassin meta. And that's when it was basically Vayne and Twitch were really strong. Those are some of the only viable AD carries, or like the really strong ones. And then Ziggs was even getting played some. And everyone said AD carry was dead, blah, blah, blah. Then we moved kind of into the Blade of the Ruined King Hurricane meta, where they buffed those items up and everyone was playing like Twitch, Caitlyn, just anything else that abused Hurricane, Blade of the Ruined King. It's just everybody was building Blade. It was Blade of the Ruined King everywhere. If you remember on my channel, in like the spring of 2017, you're getting like Blade of the Ruined King on like, I don't even remember. I seen like Blade of the Ruined King Tristana and all this other garbage. Like I talked almost every day, every stream about Blade of the Ruined King and why that item was overhyped and why crit was so good. And people should have been doing crit. Well, eventually people figured that out. A month later, everyone started building crit. All of a sudden, crit was really strong. I'd been building Ardent Sensor since like December, but all of a sudden people figured out Ardent Sensor was pretty good. You had this Ardent Sensor meta, and everybody's complaining, 80 carries are too strong. All you do is you just put a Janna with them, or a Lulu, an Ardent Sensor, and then you just scale up to 3 items. Games take too long. 80 carries are too strong. Okay? And so that was going on for like a year or something, pretty much, where like 80 carries were too strong. Everyone was crying about it. Everyone was saying if you're not playing 80 carry and support, then you might as well not be playing the game. And then they nerfed Ardent Sensor quite a lot. They gave it like 3 or 4 nerfs in the fall. And then all of a sudden, tanks are too strong. Because crit 80 carries weren't around to, deal with them anymore. So tanks are too bad. Super overpowered. That was like most of Season 8. It's like Season 8 up through like 8.8 or 8.9. Then the tanks all got nerfed a lot, and then all of a sudden assassins are too strong because now there aren't tanks to keep them in check anymore. Games are too fast. Games are ending in 20 to 25 minutes, so everyone's complaining about that. And then now you have like games are slowing down a little bit, and you're getting these new like funnel comps in the pro scene where people just kind of farm off, and try to get their 80 carry scaled up again. And games aren't over in like 15 to 20 minutes, and now everyone says that's bad because games are like too slow, there's not enough action. So it's just like no one's ever happy with anything that's going on. It's like literally like the solution to each solution to the previous problem people get mad about. Basically, because whatever the solution is creates another imbalance in the meta because you can never have a perfectly balanced meta with this many variables. So... And Riot's doing the best to come up with this, but it's just, there's always going to be people that are mad. So what's the real problem? What's the real solution here? They give content creators too much control over the narrative. They need someone from their organization to come out and explain more about what's going on in a very articulate way for people. Now they've done like some of these developer roundtable things. They have Freak who comes out and does his patch notes and stuff like that. They need more of that. They have the Dive, like that. They need something like video patch notes, honestly. I know they give out just the normal patch notes, but they need an actual Rioter to come in and explain stuff. Just have Freak do it. I mean, I guess Freak pretty much does do that. He reads the patch notes and interprets them. But they need a better job of this. Because the content creators just sensationalize everything. They make everything sound like it's the apocalypse or it's overpowered or whatever, and it's really hard for people to understand sort of what's actually going on, what's actually good, what's actually not. And it's important to realize too that the vast majority of games, to get through all of this BS that you see on other sites, like the vast majority of the games still use an AD carry. I had someone arguing with me about this like on another video that I did recently. I mean, if we look here at Platinum Plus, AD carry, pick rate. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You go through 10 champions before you get to a non-AD carry in the bot lane, right? So it's not mages everywhere, right? It's only once you start getting to a pick rate of 5% that you start to get to other weird things. And even then, it's only really Swain who's like super successful. Like you start to see some Yasuo who's like okay, but most of the other stuff is bad. Like Vlad's only 43%, and that's basically it. It's like Swain, Yasuo, or Vlad, and you're seeing some Heimer who's getting picked up a little bit more. So yeah, there are a couple of novelty picks. Like Irelia is only 47%. There are a couple of novelty picks in there, sure, but the vast majority of games still use AD carries at all elo brackets, right? And this guy's like, well, that's low elo at Platinum. Platinum accounts for 99% of people that are Platinum and lower, but even if we go look at Diamond, right? So this is the top like 0.1% at Diamond Plus, right? I think Diamond is like 0.5% is like Diamond 50 OP. It's something like that. Even if we look at this pick rate, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So only one champion out of the top 10 most played champions is a non-standard AD carry. Only one. So that's 10% of the top 10 champions at Diamond Plus are only that. You might say, well, okay, well, what about Bronze? Bronze people just watch those pro games and try to do it themselves. No, they don't. If you look here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Only one champion out of the top 15 most played champions in the bot lane is a non-AD carry. So regardless of the elo, yeah, once you start getting to the higher elos, yeah, you'll see some more wacky stuff, but it's just because it's highly overrepresented, because that's what you see on all the YouTube clips, right? So it feels like it's happening all the time, although statistically it is not. Most people are still playing AD carries most of the time. It's fine. And as far as the funnel comp, I can just tell you anecdotally, I never see that at Platinum Elo. It never happens hardly. It's extremely rare in solo queue for that to happen. And if it does happen, it fails a lot because it takes a lot of practice. I mean, even a lot of pro teams fail with this. It does not win a lot of games. There are some teams that are very good with it. There's like G2's good with it. There are a couple other, international teams that are good with it. But a lot of teams do not win with the funnel comp very well. So, and I'll let you in on a secret. A funnel comp has been going on in League of Legends for 8 years. Do you know what it's called? AD carry and support. That's literally what it is. It's just a support, someone who can function on a low gold economy, plus someone who scales really well with a lot of gold. It's like peanut butter and jelly. That's why people started doing that in Season 1. You would put the AD carry who scales really well with gold with the support. Like, the only thing that's changed is they'll go steal camps from the jungler. Or they'll, like, instead of having a proper jungler, you'll just have a support. And then you'll have the AD carry also get the jungle. So the problem then is not the funnel itself, it's that the camps in the jungle are too easy to clear. It's a combination of the camps are too easy to clear and give too much golden experience in the jungle. That's the issue. It's not that funneling in and of itself is a new thing, because that's been the standard bot lane for like 8 years. It's the amount of resources you can get if you put it in the mid lane and start jacking all of the camps. And so what you need to change, and I talked about this in a past video, is smite. You need to say, if you have smite, you only get 50% experience from lane minions, or 50% gold, or something like that. Just half it. So you can't do lane minions and jungle minions. That's the easiest fix. Then, if you want to run funnel comp, with a smite mid laner, then it's going to take you a lot longer. This would simultaneously fix the smite mid thing that people were talking about, the non-funnel, where you have like, you know, your Zoes or your Echoes or whatever running smite and stealing a bunch of jungle camps, which is terrible in lower elo, by the way, but, you know, can occasionally work in higher elo. Just fix smite. Just say, look, you get big penalties if you take smite into a lane. That's what I think. And then like maybe make the jungle a little harder to clear or something. I don't know. But I think that the easiest thing to do is just to fix smite. But anyway, so I don't think that funnel, it isn't new. It isn't like necessarily bad for the game. It's just the current state of the jungle and the smite makes it problematic. But I think it's interesting. It's a new innovation to the game. And it just doesn't happen. Like, none of this stuff just even matters at all for 99% of players. It just does not matter. You just see it sometimes in pro play and on YouTube videos, but this never happens in solo queue, hardly ever. Like, yeah, you might run into a booster who runs, like, Tarek-y every now and then, like, 1 out of your 20 games or something, but it happens so rarely, at least successfully, that people just blow it way out of proportion. And I think a big part of, like, a major problem they need to try to fix in League is to say it's okay to be silver, or it's okay to be bronze, or whatever, because there's, like, this just massively negative mantra from, like, you know, diamond or challenger level players that will say that, like, even diamond 5s are terrible or platinums are terrible. So that you have these kids going on these forums and they're just like, oh, that's terrible. Why would you, you know, listen to this person? Like, they're only diamond 5 or they're only platinum or whatever. And this person saying this is like silver. It's like, dude, come on, man. Like, I think so many people just think that they could be, you know, challenger level player if they wanted to. And it's like, no, you can't. It's not happening. Because, like, what will happen is you'll see some games and you'll see players make mistakes in, like, these clips on YouTube. And you'll say, oh, that player's terrible. That Janna missed that flash. And they, like, zoomed in on it, you know, in an I'm a Cutie Pie video. And I'm a Cutie Pie laughs at him or whatever. And it's like, yeah, but you're not going to see the other 1,000 times the person makes that flash. Or they make a really good play. It's such a small sample size that you have no idea what that person... Because, like, high-level people are still going to make mistakes. They're just going to make a lot less mistakes and a lot less severe mistakes game in and game out. They're going to have bad games. They're just going to have a lot less of them. But you don't see that. You only see a very small sample size. And so I think that lets people, or, like, makes people think, oh, I could play just as well as that person. Just like, you know, if you watch a basketball player miss a free throw, it's like, dude, I just went out in my backyard. You know, I made 2 free throws or something like that out on the deck. Easy mode, man. Shaq sucks. He can't make any free throws. Dude, he will destroy you in 1v1 in his prime, right? So I think that that's just a huge problem in League, is a lot of people just think that they deserve to be a much higher rank because they could do it easily. That leads to toxicity because they think all their stupid teammates are just holding them down and all this stuff. So I think a real way to improve League is to clean up the toxicity. Just ban people a lot more. Give them more restrictions. Just crack down. Invest a lot more money in, like, behavior control or whatever in League. I think that would help a ton. Like, investigate these situations and ban people a lot faster. Just really crack down on the code of conduct. I think that would help League more than anything else. That would be the very best investment of their resources, is for that. Because everyone, I mean, virtually everybody can agree that, like, toxic people suck, right? People who run it down middle, people who just talk all kinds of trash to people all the time. You know, there might be, like, 5% of players that think that's funny or interesting. They like to do that. But the vast majority of people hate that stuff. And so that's something that most people could agree on that would be a win with everybody if they crack down on trolls and toxic people. So I think that would be the best use of their resources. Just hire a team to go, like, they have a team that looks at stuff like this. Just, like, you know, magnify the team by, like, 10 to really get this stuff out of here a lot faster and just have a much shorter leash. And then also, I mean, it's just seasonal, you know, and it's just, like, sort of in the game cycle right now. There's just a new hot game that's free. It's Fortnite. It'll fall. You know, it'll still be relevant. I don't think it's going to fall off the face of the earth, but people get bored with it. People get tired of it. You just have to be patient. There just hasn't been something that could compete with League like this for a while. That has kind of the unique combination and has captivated especially the younger audiences as Fortnite. So that's just something that's, you know, going to happen with League viewership. Even if League didn't have any patches and didn't change any of this stuff and it was all the same, the viewership still would have fallen some because of Fortnite. That's just going to happen. But anyways, okay, so let's go ahead and talk about some of Doublelift's major claims, go through them really quickly and see if we can end this video in 10 or 15 minutes. Okay. Okay, so his first major claim is that specializing is good for League, what he calls specializing, and he uses the Z analogy where he talks about the faker outplay, and he, shows a clip from one of the developers saying that you should be able to pick out your favorite champion and play him, and that's just one of the fun things about League is to specialize, and he said that, skill equals fun. I guess that's another thing down here, which is a separate point that I'll talk about. But as far as specializing, that's true. It does inspire commitment. People who buy the skins, who really get into the lore, who really like a specific champion, and there are champions like that, that people just love to play, right? Like Yasuo or Draven or Riven or Zed. We know, just all of the high, flashy champs, people love playing those, right? People love watching people play those. So yeah, it does inspire commitment, but it also creates entitlement and bias. So that's the downside of specializing is, if you play all of your games, if you're a Draven main, and you play every single game as Draven, yeah, you're committed, but then if Draven is out of balance for some reason, maybe they introduce a new item that's particularly good on him, and they just didn't think about it. Maybe there's a new rune that's really strong, or maybe they accidentally nerfed a lot of the other AD carries, or, whatever, and they have to touch Draven, people are going to be really mad, and they think, you can't touch that, that's my favorite champion. I have 1,000 games on this champion, and how dare you touch my favorite champion, right? When in fact, there are millions of other people that play, and it's not just all about you. There's a lot of people that play, and if there's something that's too strong, they probably need to nerf it. We'll talk about nerfing here in a second, and this concept of, feels bad and loss reversion that the psychological concept of loss reversion that Doublelift talks about, but it creates bias and entitlement. People think that they're one trick, and so that creates division in a game, right? Because if you have champions that compete with each other, like Caitlyn and Vayne, you have all these Vayne one tricks and Caitlyn one tricks. Well, they're both not going to be strong in any specific meta because Caitlyn counters Vayne. So either Vayne is really overpowered to the point where she can overpower that counter matchup, or she's not, and Caitlyn just completely snuffs her out of the meta. So one of those groups of people is always going to be mad. So that's the thing. And then one-tricking also, I think, exacerbates burnout. I see this a lot in Platinum and Low Diamond. People, get to Platinum by playing, their one champion 500 games, and all of a sudden they're bored with that champion. They say, oh, man, I just don't want to play Draven anymore. I want to play, Kled top lane, or I want to play Twitch in the jungle or something like that. And then they're not as good on those champions anymore. So when they're playing in a platinum level game and all they play is Draven, and that they just don't want to play it and they want to try first time, jungle Twitch, then your team is at a severe disadvantage. And this gets more pronounced as you go up in rank, right? Because, if you are someone who is like a Riven one trick top lane and you just decide you don't want to play Riven, and let's say you have 500 games on Riven, and let's say you want to play, I don't know, Kled top lane for first time, and you're matched up against a Darius top lane who's a one-trick Darius that has 500 games on Darius, you're going to get destroyed. If it's Platinum or Diamond or whatever, because you're not going to know the matchup at all. You're going to have a severe experience disadvantage. And so, basically, just whoever gets more one-tricks on their team, who are on their specific champion, has a massive edge in the game most of the time, and that just gets crazier once you get to Diamond and Master and Challenger. The specialization goes up so much that if you have someone on your team that's auto-filled, it's over. I mean, you might be able to win, but it's going to be really, really hard. And players talk about this all the time. They'll say, oh, it's just a coin flip or rolling the dice or whatever. It's but it's not really. You can dodge it, or you could choose to be more diverse and switch roles with the person so they're more likely to get their thing. But that's the downside of specialization, is that it creates these terrible mismatches in solo queue when people are so good on their specialized champion, and then if everyone else doesn't get their champion, then they failed. Now they're trying to change that with the positional rank system next league, where if you are an off role, if you're not playing your specialized role, then you play against lower ranked people. So they're trying to address that, but they're addressing that specifically because specialization is not always all good for league. It sometimes is, but if you step outside of your own skin and you say, okay, well, it's good for me because I'm a one-trick Draven, but if you step outside of that and you say, overall, it's not great for game design because it creates a lot of mismatched games at the top, right? And so if you change the meta around like they have been doing, yes, that screws up the one tricks, but it also creates opportunities for other people to learn stuff in that chaos and be on similar footing with everybody else, right? If everybody just had all of their stuff, shuffled around, then people get to start fresh and do new things and experiment with different stuff without having to feel like they have to play their one trick all the time. To be competitive. So in other words, if nobody knows what's going on, if everybody's discovering stuff, then the skill floor falls a lot, and that allows for a lot more diversity and fun with a lot of players, I think. I mean, that's part of why like new games have such great allure to them, right? Because you're discovering, it's fun, it's exciting, right? So like Fortnite, when it first comes out, it's really hot, it's exciting, people are finding out new strategies, like where things drop. I'm not a Fortnite expert, I don't know. But it's fun because people aren't good at it. That's why it's fun, a lot of it. Because it's a new game, people are mostly very casual about it, but this is kind of the life cycle of a game. As people get a lot more serious about it, especially if they start adding in ranked, people start, exploiting certain things in the game. Maybe they're very good hiding spots or very good, like, building strategies or very good, whatever else is out there. Once people understand the game more and there becomes this like elite class of people in the game that start destroying the casual players, then all of a sudden it's not going to be as much fun for a lot of people because those people who have practiced all that stuff a lot are going to have a huge edge. So that's just the natural thing about League, is that specializing, becoming a lot better at something is anti-fun for a lot of people, especially casual people. Because they don't have time to do that. They don't have time to specialize and have that kind of fun, right? So yes, it's very cool when Faker outplays Ryu. I think it was Ryu. I don't remember the exact player there. With the Z versus Z. That's awesome. That's a great expression of skill. That's all good. But it's not always all good with specialization. Okay? So that's very important to keep that in mind. Okay. So I think that specialization is good to a point, but you also need to shuffle up and change. And I think that adding in that new positional ranking system, I have a whole video about that on the channel if you want to check that out. I think that is a good sort of negotiation where you can still specialize, but if you're playing something that you're not specialized in, you're going to be put at a lower rank so that it's a more fair game for everyone else in your game. So I think that's good. Okay, nerfing champs feels bad. That's true. If you have a very myopic view, right? If you have a very limited view, like, man, my champion just got nerfed, I'm a one-trick Riven player or whatever, that sucks. I agree with that. However, balancing is complex, and it's important to understand that a nerf is also a buff, right? If you nerf a certain champion, you are buffing other champions that compete with that champion for a specific niche in the game. So, for example, if you nerf Caitlyn, you are buffing Lucian, Twitch, Vayne, and these other, like, bad early game AD carries that scale well later on to the game, especially the short range ones. So yes, nerfing Kate feels bad for Kate one-tricks, but the Lucians who haven't had a viable meta in like 3 or 4 years, the Lucian mains, can finally play that champion and have a decent shot to win. That is a buff. That's a win. So yes, it feels bad if, your Caitlyn gets nerfed, but it feels really good if you've been waiting to play Lucian for 3 years and you can finally play him. Or if you really like Twitch and now you can finally play Twitch because you aren't going to get slammed in the first, 10 minutes of the game as much as you were when, like, it was a Caitlyn Sona meta, for example. Or Vayne. I mean, Vayne is still bad right now, let's be honest, because she just has a lot of problems, but that's just an example of nerfing Caitlyn. So if you nerf certain things, it creates opportunities for other champions to arrive. Heimerdinger, because Caitlyn doesn't exist bot lane right now, then Heimerdinger can surface as the premier push zone control person. If Caitlyn was still really good, I'll guarantee you we wouldn't see Heimer in the bot lane because she would just outrange his turrets, take him down, and just push him into his tower. He wouldn't be able to do his thing. So, and like Janna, for example. Now, I'm telling you, I played a lot of Janna. Most people, if you're just like, what is the strategy professor's main, you would probably say it was Janna. I had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Janna games over the last 2 seasons with a pretty high win rate, 55% plus, with like 700 Janna games last season. Now, I played other stuff too. I played a lot of games last season because I stream every night for 5 hours. But was I mad when they nerfed Janna to like a lot? Not really, like kind of, but I was like, okay, I can play other things now because I don't have to play Janna every game because she's so oppressively powerful versus everybody else, right? And because Janna got nerfed, that was a huge catalyst for why assassins are viable again. If Janna did not, if she still had her 10-second shield in lane and all of this other stuff, like 10-second cooldown on her shield in lane and all this other stuff, then she just presses out a lot of other champs. You just can't play certain champs if Janna is dominating the meta. Anything that's melee that wants to dive is going to be a lot harder. So, yeah, you know, did that hit me? Did that hurt my win percentage? Yeah, probably, because I can't play my champion I had the highest win rate on. But it's better for the game because it creates more diversity, because she was very oppressive, right? Because she was just so much better than every other support in solo queue most of the time. So it's important to keep that in mind. It's like, yes, it feels bad if they nerf your one trick, if you have a very limited view of the game. But if you open your mind a little bit and try to think about other people, then you can see that a lot of times nerfs are actually buffs for other people. They just don't articulate it. This is a problem of communication that I mentioned before. So they need to come in and like have Riot say things like, we are nerfing Caitlyn specifically to give other AD carries a chance to shine, such as, and then list like 3 or 4 champs. Have fun experimenting with this. You know, like, that's how they need to phrase it. So it doesn't need to be like, hey, this is bad, this is a nerf. It's like, hey, this is an opportunity for other champs. And then they need to list other champs specifically that they have in mind that they would like to see, you know, rise. Now you could say, well, why don't they just buff the other champs? They can, but the problem is, like, sometimes there are just certain champions that starve out all the other champs. And when you start buffing, like, a bunch of different champions, then it creates a lot more instability because you're generating more changes. Whereas if you nerf the very top, then you bring the top like few champions down to an even level with the rest of the people. So yeah, there should be buffs, but I think there are also a place for nerfs because there are just sometimes certain champs that block a lot of other champions. So it's like, yeah, you could just buff Lucian, Twitch, Vayne until they're like as powerful as Caitlyn, but then no other AD carries would be viable at all. Because they would all be Caitlyn level overpowered, probably, right? And then you'd have all the Sivir mains complaining and all the Ezreals complaining. Whereas if you bring Caitlyn down, now Lucian, Twitch, and Vayne are more viable, but then also other champs like Ezreal and Sivir and, you know, things like that are also still relatively viable because they're all down on like this relatively equal, more equal playing field. Versus if you buff a few specific ones a ton, then they wouldn't be. And there is the problem of power creep, which he does mention in his video. If you just make everybody overpowered, I mean, I think that makes for a bad game. But anyways, we'll move on. Okay, so why rework a champ? So he talks specifically about Aatrox here, and he says, well, why should we rework Aatrox when we could have just made a completely new champion and left the old Aatrox? Well, the thing is, the rework takes a long time in the production cycle. I don't know their exact numbers. It would be helpful if Riot said this, would come out and say something like, hey, we've been working on this Aatrox. We realize some people are upset because Aatrox was now viable, but we've been working on this rework for 6 months. And we have to go through with it because we've already committed so many assets to it, right? So they already did all of the visualization stuff. They had, you know, a lot of the testing and, you know, intellectual property behind his new kit. All of that stuff. So, you know, the reason here, a lot of it is just some, like, new champs require a lot more art, assets, and lore, and people aren't committed to them. So, for example, if you just created an entirely new champion, Aatrox was overpowered in his current, he is overpowered now, but even before he got reworked, he was overpowered, so he was going to get nerfed. And he was very linear. Like, he's basically was only going to be good in a meta where Ginsu's Rageblade was overpowered and, like, certain types of champions were good. He was a very niche counterpick, whereas now he's a much more well-rounded champion that can be picked into a lot of different comps. Now, he is overpowered right now, so he will be nerfed, but I think he's a lot more stable. He's a lot more viable in more situations than he has been in the past. But yeah, you already have all the skins for him, so you don't have to develop new art assets for the skins when you rework a champion. So, you know, all of those skins that maybe people have had for a long time that they haven't been able to play that champion, now they can play that champion, right? So if you had every Heimerdinger skin or whatever, I don't know how many he has, if he has like 5 skins or something, and you've been, you know, a Heimerdinger fan for a long time, but then you just haven't been able to play him a lot because you want to win in ranked, Well, now you can actually use all of those skins. Whereas if they, if they reworked Aatrox, for example, if they just made him into an entirely new champ, if you had all the Aatrox skins and stuff, he would still be bad after they nerfed him. But now with the new one, you can use all those new, old skins you've had for a long time on this new reworked champion and get excited about it. And they can also sell, a lot of those old skins. They get a renewed life cycle, right? Whereas lots of new people come to Aatrox, and there's already this huge catalog of skins they can buy from. So yes, it is more money for Riot because they get to sell the old skins, but it's also just good for people who have had those skins for a long time as well. And they already have all the lore, they have the communities, they have all these like Reddit communities for them. They have the lore, there are all these like videos on YouTube about it. It just already has an entire ecosystem of skins and intellectual property around champions that have been around for a long time. So that's why. It's like, yeah, they could create a new champion, but it costs a lot more money to do that. You're going to lose money because you don't have a skin library ready for them yet, or you have to develop a bunch of new skins for it, and you're going to have to build a new community around that champion from scratch. So that's why they rework stuff. Now, yeah, some people on the rework in the one-trick community will be upset about anything that gets reworked. But overall, I think it's just better to work with the assets that you have. And there are so many champions right now anyways, and so many like really old champions with outdated kits that it just makes sense to me that they would just do a lot more reworks than new champion releases. So that's why. It's not just as easy as snap your finger, okay, here's 2 different champions, and it costs the same amount of money and all of that stuff. They spend a lot of time thinking about these things, and those are the big reasons. Okay, number 4, skill is fun in League. So, Doublelift was saying that most people, like the chat interactions suck in League and people are toxic and mean. So what's fun about the game is having a lot of skill and outplaying people. It's like, sort of, but once again, most people are very casual and they don't play enough games to develop a large amount of skill for the game. So they like novelty. They like change. They like to be able to play their new... whatever they saw on this all caps video from Night Blue or whatever, right? So novelty is fun. So skill takes time and practice and commitment to certain strategies and certain champions to get a real level of skill. Novelty, you just pick up the champion and just play it. You're like, oh man, this is fun. Look at these abilities. Wow, I've never thought of getting a Wit's End on Janna middle or whatever, right? Like, it doesn't require any kind of commitment. You just go out and do it. So and those are opposites of each other, right? So if a game is encouraging like that type of stuff, then it's those types of people aren't interested in like real skill, right? They're interested in novelty. So yeah, a lot of people don't commit to that. It's only the committed players that are the one tricks that play certain champions a lot and go for the outplay. But that is very, very few people in the community are fully committed to that. So it's like, yeah, for pro level players, I would say it's nice. I would even say for viewers or spectators that novelty is better. For a lot of just like casual people that watch League, I think novelty is better than skill. Like, yeah, the really committed one-trick players will notice it, but if you just sit down and watch a game of League of Legends, even with a lot of the commentary going on, if you watch the commenters, they aren't even talking about most of the skill, and most people don't even see it. Like the animation canceling on Graves or whatever to make his auto attacks feel so smooth. I heard Kobe talking about that the other day. I'm like, I didn't even notice that. I was watching that. I was like, yeah, it seems like he's doing that well, but a lot of people can't even tell really skillful play from non-skillful play when it comes to stuff like that. So it's like, I think it draws in a lot more viewers. They're like, oh my god, there's a Heimerdinger bot lane. I think that is a much better headline than, oh my god, Faker's playing Orianna for the 500th time and he just has perfect precision with his zoning off of his Orianna ball. It's just amazing. He's going to deny an extra 2 CS at level 3 from his other mid laner. It's like, yeah, that's a really high level of skill cap, but who cares? Like, people would rather see the Heimerdinger bot lane, right? Or you'd rather see, oh my god, in this game, I don't know about you, but a lot of other people, that's what I do. I see, like, okay, what are the champions in this game? Is it something I'm interested in watching a lot of times? Sometimes it's matchup, but sometimes I'll be like, oh wow, I've never seen, whatever they're doing here, right? Like the trying to think of something wacky, like a Smite Echo mid lane in a pro game or something. I want to see what that's all about, right? I'd rather see that than something like, okay, here's the, 500th time Uzi's played Ezreal bot lane. Now, Ezreal is kind of fun to watch. So, yeah, there are some champs that are skillful that are fun to watch, right? Like, it's fun to watch Yasuo. It's fun to watch Ezreal. Hey, thanks, Tom, for the sub. I appreciate it. It's fun to watch the high skill cap type of champions, and people play them like, man, that was a great Zed out player. Man, that was a Mad Life hook. That was amazing. That is cool. So skill does matter. I'm just saying for most people, and even for a lot of the viewing experience, novelty is just as important as seeing fresh stuff, new stuff, as it is to really appreciate the nuances of very high-level skill play, most of which is invisible to most people. Okay, so it's like, yeah, skill is fun, but novelty is also really important for the game, especially for the casual player base. Okay, changing meta forces more practice for pros. I'm going to say false. I'm going to say, Doublelift is saying, well, we have to, scrim 12 hours a day to practice for this evolving meta. It's like you would have to do that anyways. It doesn't matter if it's your 1,000th time playing Caitlyn. Like, you still have to practice it with these strategies to stay on top of your mechanics. Because that's what all the Koreans are doing. The practices are probably different, right? So you're not sitting there, practicing the same thing over and over and over again to a high level of skill and perfection, right? You're practicing different stuff. You're doing different things in different scrims probably. You're like, okay, let's try out Heimer bottom. Okay, let's try out this kind of funnel. Let's try out that kind of funnel. You're doing different stuff in practices probably, but you would still be scrimming just as much. Like, I can't imagine a coach that's like really trying to contend for Worlds, that's trying to get to Worlds and do well, just saying, hey, you know what, guys? The meta has been about the same for 4 weeks or so. I think we pretty much have the game perfect. Let's just practice for 8 hours today, and you guys just take 4 hours and go do whatever you want. I'm not gonna say that. They're they're not gonna be satisfied. They're gonna say, hey, no, you need to execute this better. We're gonna come here and you're gonna practice like landing this skill shot, in the practice tool for an hour. I want you to like throw this hook for an hour or something, or I want you to practice flashing this wall because you missed this flash in the last, scrim. Or I want you to this time I want you to get 95 CS instead of 90 CS at 10 minutes or whatever. Like, it's going to be practicing these very, very specific things to improve your skill. And I would argue for a lot of pro players, that probably creates even more burnout because it's getting so skill intensive at that point where you just have to be like the absolute most precise person at whatever it is that's the top of the meta. So like if Caitlyn is in the meta for like 8 months again, you have to be the best, most crisp Caitlyn player out there or you're going to fail. And I would think that would be a lot more boring than like trying a bunch of different stuff out constantly as a pro player. I mean, I understand the tension, right? Where like I could lose my job if like AD carry, if people perceive AD carries to be out of the meta. I get that. But I'm just thinking like, would I rather practice the same thing? Like if I have to practice for 12 hours, would I rather practice like the same champion every single day and just practice the nuances of every single skill shot and just get all my timings perfectly? Or would I rather be pretty good on a bunch of different champions, right? So instead of being like, 99% on one champion, would it be more fun to be 85% on 3 different champions so that our team has more versatility and we play different stuff? I would rather be 85% on 3 champs, honestly. I think that would be a lot more fun in the meta. But anyway, so I don't think that you would practice less just because the meta's not changing as much. I just think the type of stuff you would practice would be a lot more precise and probably more stressful and boring, I would guess. And then, yeah, fans are tired of watching that stuff too. So I think it could create more burnout for players by doing that. And then also fans just get tired of watching Caitlyn and Orianna for like, the 500th time in pro play. Okay, number 6, Fortnite is gaining viewers from pros streaming, is what he said. Well, first of all, there is no pro scene in Fortnite, right? And it's important to understand that that's a key element behind the game because it's very casual. As I explained before, once Fortnite starts getting professionalized, once people start getting a lot more hardcore about it, if they add in ranked and people start getting serious, it's going to be a lot different. If there are ever pro teams, they're going to have to start practicing a lot and they're going to be streaming less. So yeah, right now it's kind of like the perfect ecosystem it's just like a magnet for casual players from all kinds of other games, League, and then from other games as well. And it's pulling in all kinds of people that just historically don't play a lot of video games, like a lot of, high school kids that don't play a lot of video games. I know my cousin plays Fortnite a lot with his friends, just because it's such a social craze right now, because it's just so in vogue. It's just the hotness, So yeah, of course popular players can stream more because that's their full-time job. They don't have any pro commitments. They might call themselves pro, they might be signed with TSM or some other brand or whatever, but they're not actually like in a place practicing doing pro level things. Like these pro events that they do, from what I understand, it's like basically you like duo queue or you like play squads with people and you just go into like normal ranked games and just try to see how many kills you get or all this other stuff. Like it's not something that requires a lot of heavy practice and strategy, and so it just is not going to require that kind of commitment. So it's not really fair to compare Fortnite with League pros. I'll guarantee you, if League pros got more time off, they would not be creating a lot more content. Probably they'd probably be going to sleep or just like doing something else to de-stress, and I think that would be good for them. But I just don't think all of a sudden, even if I don't think they would trim practice hours, like I said, but even if they did, I just don't think they would all of a sudden feel like motivated to go start cranking out more League content. If you want more League content from people, you got to put it in their contracts and just say, hey, look, you're on TSM, you need to stream for 3 hours a day. We're going to cut you 2 hours off practice time so you can do that, but that's what you need to do. Like, that's how you get, if Riot wants to do that or if teams want to do that, then that's their prerogative, but I don't think a lot of players would do that of their own accord unless they make a ton of money at it and they're a really big streamer. I mean, some pro players just would not make very good streamers, right? They just don't have the personality for it, and they just don't want to mess with it. So anyways, I think that that's an interesting point, but a little misleading. Many games with a stable meta are vibrant. Sort of. I mean, I saw someone in the comment section mention, like, chess hasn't had a patch since like 1667 or whatever, 1267, I don't remember the date, but it's like, yeah, but like that's a very different demographic a lot of times than people playing League of Legends. NA players are very fickle. As I mentioned before, people jump from game to game a lot. They're very casual, although they would like to think of themselves as, deserving more. I just feel like it's feeling very casual, but yet very entitled. Like they think they should be able to play 2 games a day and be challenger. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if that's just a thing about American culture or why. I mean, it feels like that's a problem, not just in video games and League of Legends, but in a lot of things where people don't. I don't know. I mean, I don't want to make too wide sweeping generalizations, but I feel like a lot of people are feeling very entitled. And I don't even necessarily think it's a specific generation. The millennials or whatever, that's kind of like the meme or whatever, entitled. I think there are a lot of people like that, even some older people and even people that are younger than millennials. So I don't know. I think that's a bigger cultural problem, but I just think that, if a game was stable for a long time, you don't see a lot of those games that are stable at the top, right? If we go to, CSGO, I don't know how many patches there are in CSGO. I don't know how many patches there are in CSGO, so that might be something, but like Overwatch changes a lot. Dota just switched, and they're starting to change a lot more every 2 weeks. I don't know. And like PUBG and Fortnite are kind of the new hotness over the last year and a half. They're just kind of the new hotness in games. So that by itself is a type of change. That it's just new, it's novel. But yeah, like a lot of these games, they just don't change very much. I'm thinking like StarCraft 2, for example. Meta has probably been pretty solidified. It might change every now and then, but it's probably fairly solidified. So I don't know if I would call that vibrant, 5,000 viewers versus League's like 145,000, And I love StarCraft 2. It was a lot of fun to play. I'm not sure why. Are there like speed runs going on with this or something? There's like one person with like 83,000 viewers. I don't know. Twitch is like, the viewership is sometimes kind of iffy because there's like a special event going on or a specific person. So I don't know about CSGO, but really that's the only one, if that is stable, that's one of the only games that has a stable meta that's competitive. I imagine Hearthstone changes a lot. They put out new decks, and there's probably, I don't know. But I know if it's like Magic, then the metagame changes pretty frequently. And I think it's kind of like Magic the Gathering online. So anyways, most of these games, if they're competitive, they're going to change pretty frequently. World of Warcraft changes fairly frequently. It's only really like, this only has a lot of viewership because it's very near a new patch and a new expansion, I think. WoW has this cycle where it's like new patch, everyone comes in, everyone's excited, and then as the patch goes on, people, leave. It's got a lot of fair weather fans, but anyways. So yeah, I mean, like, it's kind of a point, but like at the same time, people like novelty. They like new stuff. They like change, right? A lot of the stuff, are like newer games. Some of them are older. But I don't know. I just think that you have to change to keep up with casual players. You can't just sit on the same meta for a long time. So, I don't know. Maybe it doesn't have to be every 2 weeks. Maybe, it could be a month or 2 months or something and just do bigger patches. I could get on board with that. I think that's probably true. But at the same time, I don't think that most games that are stable have very vibrant metas or have very vibrant communities because there's just not enough change to hold people's interest. Time allows for creative solutions. I think this is true. People could find solutions to certain things, but do you want to sit in that meta until someone does find a solution? So for Ardent Censor, they tried this, right? We have proof of this from last year, right? There was Ardent Censor. They did not touch Censor for a really long time. Like, Censor got buffed. If we look at this was the grand experiment in what Doublelift is talking about, right? Just remember what you thought about the Ardent Censor meta. Remember what probably Doublelift said about the Ardent Censor meta. Even though he was probably winning a lot of games because of it, he was probably complaining about it a lot too. Okay, so it was buffed on patch 7.2. Right, it was also buffed. I think this is when it got really good. And this is when I started talking about it. If you go back and watch my patch notes from 6.22, I think I have patch notes dating that far back, you'll see I was talking about, man, this is really strong because now it heals for, it has on-hit healing, has on-hit damage, attack speed. It just has crazy stats. It's really strong. So I was like, hey, this is really good. This is a great item. Bonus attack speed and heals, shields, blah, blah, blah. Okay, it got another buff in 7.2. So now it's even stronger because it scales. So this is where it started really kind of going out of control. All right. And yeah, sometimes people sleep on things. Like, I thought that the Malzahar support was really strong back then too, and people didn't figure out about it for like a month. And then Ardent Censor was really strong, and people didn't figure out about it for a little while, right? But they weren't nerfed because they're under the radar. The stuff that gets changed a lot of times is the stuff that like has a huge bullseye on its head, like, hey, this is too strong in this meta a lot of times. So I don't think that some of these solutions, I mean, I get it, like, if the meta shifts all the time, like, maybe we don't get all of the permutations in it, but the opposite can also be true. From 7.2 all the way to 7.17, that's 15 patches of this item being, like, probably the best support item in the game. The only other item that could compete with it was Redemption, and Redemption was also nerfed around that time, I think. What was Redemption's cycle? So a big thing about Ardent was, like, Redemption and Locket both got nerfed at around the same time that Ardent got buffed. Or it was similar. Yeah, it was literally the same patch, 7.2, right? So that would be, like, around February in that timeline, like maybe like mid-February. So the active heal got reduced a lot. So this being nerfed buffed Ardent Censor. So when you nerf one thing, you buff another thing. So Enchanters needed something else to replace the nerfed Redemption. Boom, there's Ardent Censor. Now there's something even better you can rush. Then they ended up nerfing Redemption again on 7.12. But my point is this. There were 15 patches of Ardent Censor, and people did not figure out a very good solution. Like, it was still the best item for a really, really long time. And a lot of people were very mad about that. They said the game, like, oh, you know, it's too slow. 80 carries scale up all the time. You have to play Janna. Like, you can't play any tanks. Like, tanks were terrible all last season. AP supports really weren't that great most of the season, except in, like, you know, like, gold and lower. They were still even, like, okay there, but Janna was just, like, unequivocally just so strong. Janna, Lulu, and then also, like, some Nami, some Sona, but mostly Janna and Lulu for, like, 15 patches. So, I don't know. So that's just something to keep in mind. Is it's like, yeah, the meta can evolve, but some people just get really tired of the same items and the same champions being oppressive for, like, 5 patches, right? Let alone, you know, 15 patches. So people, you know, and you see this all the time on threads. People say, why haven't they nerfed Zoe yet? Why haven't they nerfed, you know, whatever, Aatrox yet? Why wasn't he hotfixed? Why haven't they nerfed Heimerdinger yet? You know, everyone just complains about why have they let these really powerful champions stay around for so long? You know, why did it take them so long to nerf Ginsu's? You know, all that stuff. And it's because they're trying to do what Doublelift is saying, allow time for creative solutions. But sometimes there just aren't solutions. People figure out the meta, and the best is the best. So it's going to be the same thing for, like, you know, probably like 90% of the time for a really long time. He mentions the Bisu thing, right? So he says that Protoss versus Zerg had almost always favored Zerg for like 8 years, and then all of a sudden Bisu comes up with this new strategy that involved like Corsairs and some other stuff, but there was probably a patch that changed that too. He said there had only been 3 content patches, you know, over that time period. It's like, yeah, but one of those content patches probably changed what Bisu did. I don't know for sure. But even let's just say that nothing affected Protoss or Zerg on those patches for those 3 years. Is that a game that people would want to play? Where the same matchup, like, you see the same matchup a lot, and in this day and age, you know, in 2018, where you see the same matchup and it doesn't change for 8 years? Like, do people want Caitlyn to just completely, like, crush every 80 carry for 8 years before they do anything about it? I'm going to say no. So I don't know. I think that's not really a fair comparison. Esports were very, very different back then. It was a much, much smaller audience. There were far, far fewer casual players that were playing competitive games. So it's just a completely different landscape right now. There's a lot less competition from other games. They're just, you know, StarCraft and Warcraft 3, those are like the only games in town. Maybe like CS, like whatever Counter-Strike iteration there was. But there just were not a lot of other, like, you know, competitive online gaming options at that time. So, anyways, and then the final one is buff weak champs, bigger patch, more time. I think it's a good idea, but just keep in mind that sometimes it's easier to nerf the top tier, and that indirectly buffs everyone else, because a buff and a nerf are just two sides of the same coin. It just depends on which champions are going to be more viable in a given meta. It doesn't matter if you call it a nerf or a buff. It's a change. Some champions get stronger, some champions get weaker. So, I mean, you could just as easily say, if you change the numbers on Caitlyn, you could just as easily say that's a buff to Vayne, and just not even say it's a nerf to Caitlyn. Say, we're changing Caitlyn's numbers, we're buffing Vayne. It's the exact same thing. You're just using different words. But it's the same effect. So, I kind of agree with that. So, I don't know. I mean, we'll see where it goes. Like, so my main takeaway from this is, like, Doublelift makes some good points, but some of his points are really specious in the sense that, like, they seem to make a lot of really good sense, but they're kind of dangerous ideas that sort of undermine a lot of the complexity in the game and just how challenging it is to balance this and to appease these 5 different groups, right? Riot, content creators, pro players, committed players, and casual players. So, I think they're doing all right. I still just think the biggest thing is just PR. They just need to explain what they're doing better for casual people and why it's good for the game. And I think they need to do that in patch notes, or they need to release videos about it that detail and explain these things a lot more. So I think right now the thought is that Riot doesn't know what they're doing and that they're inept, and, you know, people are just mad about it. So anyways, that's going to be it. Thank you very much. This is definitely a lot longer than I intended, but hopefully I covered a lot of this stuff. Hopefully you find it interesting. Let me know what you think in the comments. But yeah, so good points. I wouldn't mind a little bit further spaced out patches, but I wouldn't go too far with it. And, you know, I do like buffing the very bottom champs, right? So if it's things that just never, ever get played, yeah, go ahead and buff them, you know. But, like, stuff that's, you know, like, you know, tier 2 or tier 3, you probably don't need to buff those that much. So, like, let me get an example here for you. Champions that I think they should buff here. I mean, it's tough. I think Amumu... I would say Gnar, but, like, he's really oppressive when he's strong in a given meta. People that just... Diana needs like a rework. See, she's so like some champions that aren't played a lot, it's because they're extremely difficult to balance and they're very linear. Like Diana is super one-dimensional. She just jumps on you and just smashes her face on the keyboard, and she either kills you or she doesn't, and that's it. Like there's very little counterplay, very little mobility with her. It's super one-dimensional. So that's the kind of champion that needs a rework because it's just too difficult to balance. Like if you give her too many buffs, she's just so oppressive to other assassins because she'd be much more reliable and consistent because it's just so easy to play. So I think that's dangerous. And like the way that Nara's kit works, it's dangerous to buff him as well because they're like Cassiopeia. It's dangerous to buff her for pro play because, you know, really good players can just take over the game with her, like Azir. Like, some of this stuff is just really, really difficult to balance, even on champions that have very low win rates. But I think, like, Diana should probably be reworked. Akali should probably be reworked for similar reasons. She takes a bit more skill than Diana, but it's no skill shots, just jumping around. You know, I would have said Dinger, but now Dinger's actually really good because the meta changed, so I don't think we even necessarily need to buff Dinger. In fact, people are probably going to be saying nerf Dinger soon. Ivern, but he's kind of dangerous also if he gets too strong. They're changing Lissandra. It's like there are a couple. Lee could use a couple of buffs. So there are some, but I think most champions are kind of viable in certain situations. Kennen could probably use a little love. They've buffed Kindred a lot. Some people think she's even overpowered right now. I'm not one of those people, but Nidalee could use some love, but once again, you got to balance around the Korean pro Nidalee players. So she's just pretty much always going to be bad in solo queue unless you're like a challenger or one-trick Nidalee. Pantheon needs a rework. He's very linear, very one-dimensional. Olaf could probably use a little love, but his ult, very dangerous. If he's strong, it's hard to deal with him. They are buffing Rek'Sai next patch. That's a good call. She'd be a good candidate. Ryze, very dangerous to buff. Quinn is you could probably buff Quinn a little bit, but yeah, I mean there aren't many champions that like Volibear needs something. Volibear's probably like one of the worst. But yeah, like I mean most champions are pretty decent like in certain circumstances. So I don't know. Anyways, that's it. This video is too long, so I think he did make some good points. I just wanted to bring out like some of the complexity behind sort of what's going on there and like why it's not as easy to fix as it seems because of all of these different elements. So anyways, that's going to be it. Thank you very much. If you enjoyed the content, be sure to like and subscribe. If you know other people that would enjoy it, be sure to point them my way on the channel. I'm also on Twitter at @TheStratProf. I talk about whenever I release new videos. I stream every night starting around 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I announce these things on Twitter, so if YouTube doesn't give you the message for whatever reason that I'm streaming, you know, be sure to go ahead and sign up for Twitter, and that'll give you an alert as well. But that's going to be it. Thank you very much. Be sure to check out the rest of the content on the channel, and I'll see you next time.